Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to show you how to diagnose an issue with a vintage receiver or amplifier when you have no audio out from either channel and your speaker relay will not engage. I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy vintage audio equipment, you've come to the right spot. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell, as well as giving me a big thumbs up if you like this video, and share it with others. There is a risk of serious injury or death from electrical shock working on this equipment. If you're not comfortable with working on the equipment, please do not take the cover off and consult a professional. Today I'm going to use a Marantz 2245 receiver and show you how you can troubleshoot many issues when you have a piece of vintage stereo equipment that appears to power up, but there's no audio output from either channel. Okay, I'm going to power up this Marantz 2245. Let's see what happens here. Okay. Waiting for that speaker relay to click, and we hear nothing. The front is lit up. I'm looking at it here. The FM's working, or appears to be. You know, I can adjust the tuning dial up and down, and it looks like it's finding channels, but there is no output because the speaker relay hasn't engaged. So usually that's one of three things in these units. It could be the protection board itself, this guy up here, or it could be one of the amplifier assemblies, either the left or the right channel, and we're going to narrow that down now. I'm going to see what each of these amplifier assemblies, the DC offset from them. Reading this here is bypassing the speaker relay. So if I read them right now, the speaker relay, I know it isn't working because I did not hear that distinctive click. So if I measure DC offset right now out at the speaker terminals, that just isn't going to give me any information because there's nothing there. It's totally just open right now. So what I need to find out is this problem with the protection board itself, or is it one of the amplifier sections? So I'm going to measure from the right and the left channel the DC offset, and let's see what we've got. So here's the right channel, and you got to be careful in here. I've got my camera behind me. I'm kind of in a position I'm not usually in, so I've got to be ultra careful because there are plenty of places to short things together here, and I don't care how much experience you've got, you got to be extremely careful around any of these assemblies. And for you guys that don't have any experience, well, you know, you're going to get some, and you're going to make mistakes from time to time. I'm going to try not to make a mistake right now. So I'm going to get my meter here ready. Let's see if I can get that turned on. I don't know if I can show you that at the same time. Well, it doesn't look like it does. Well, maybe I can, or maybe you're going to have to believe me what I read. Well, maybe this is going to be interesting. Let me put it there, and I'm going to read the right channel. Let's see if I can do this without blowing the thing up even worse. It's about 20 millivolts. That's good. I mean, nothing wrong with that. That's not the reason why this thing, why the speaker relay won't engage. So let's go to the other channel, which is the left channel. See again if I don't cause some kind of problem. Well, there's your problem. I don't know if y'all can see that. That's not 36 millivolts. That's 36.4 volts. You know, will this blow up your speakers? Yes, it will. So there's the problem. So we can assume from this then, let me get the probe and my meter out of here for something bad happens. We can assume from that probably the protection board's good. right? I mean, it could have a problem too after we fix whatever the other problem is. But the problem is with that left channel having 36.5 volts on it. So let's try to figure that out. Okay, I've got the amplifier module laying out on its side. I'm going to look right here. Right off, this is the same lead. You can't see it now. I showed it earlier. That goes over to this. Let's see if I show you some light here. See in there, but this protection module where the speaker relay is. We were looking on that other side where there was 36 volts, and I'm just going to verify that here. I removed the amplifier assembly. Got it out in a position where I think I can work on it here anyway. The other one here I have right out of the chassis right now. He's unhooked. I'm going to reseat the power transistors and do some work on the amp board itself, but this is a more important problem right now where this guy here, for whatever reason, he's I'm going to try to stick my probe in here, hold the camera, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's the 36 volts we saw. So it's right there on that yellow lead, that same yellow lead we saw up on the protection circuit. So let's see what we can do to find out what's causing that. Okay, I've got the heat sink unattached. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this heatsink out of the way. Notice this bias resistor. Almost all of the amplifiers or receivers have something like this. Make sure there's a screw that goes through the heatsink. This actually mounts right against the heatsink here. I had to remove a screw. If you do not remove that screw, those wires are so easy to break. So always make sure to check for that. That's certainly, if you haven't done this before, that'll be something that you've got a good chance of missing. I'm going to go ahead and remove the power transistors out of this heatsink. I want to reseat those anyways. That's not my problem, is, as you know, we've got 35 volts where we should have a few millivolts. But I've got this separated now, and you may be able to see down in there. Wires are soldered. The power supply leads to the power transistors. But if I remove these transistors here, I can just remove them, and the transistors will just pull out, and then the sockets will pull out also, and it'll make it easier to work on. Okay, here we go. I've got the heatsink off. Got it in my hand here, so that's nice, right? I can take it out, and I'll just take this right to the sink and clean it, you know, get all that dirt out of it and everything. And then when we assemble it again, get some new thermal compound and some new insulators, power transistor insulators. One thing, I wanted to take this off. As you know, working on this issue with where we're supposed to have just a few millivolts, we have 35 volts. A lot of issues with all old stereo equipment, especially on these areas that do get warm, are solder joint issues. So I wanted to just eyeball it. I usually do anyway, but in this case I'm definitely going to, because we got a problem, and just see if I can see anything. Maybe some of these solder joints are cracking, and maybe it'll be that simple of a fix. A good tip also, when you're tearing something apart like this, you're going to have 20, 30, 40 different fasteners. And when you're taking it apart, you may think, well, I know where they all go. And by the time you're done and you're putting it back together, you're wondering, where does this stuff go? And in some of them, there's not that big of a difference, you know, and you're looking and, well, this one's a millimeter shorter than that one, and which one is which. Unless if you're an expert, that's great. You can just throw them all in a bowl. But like for an example here, I've just put the 4 screws that hold the power transistors into their holders, right back in their holders. What a great place to save them, right? You know that's where they belong, and they'll be there when you put it back together. So you know, if you're putting this back together in 5 minutes, you may not have to do this. But if you get back here in a few days, this is really nice that you know where everything goes. Same thing up here on this bias transistor. Hope you can see the screw. You know, it's just hanging out of it a little bit, but that's the fastener that goes there. How about a ground down here on the chassis? You may be able to see it here with my finger. This guy goes right down there, and I've got the screw just down in the chassis. So, I mean, these are just simple things you can do, because when you're all done to put this back together, this is sometimes one of the biggest problems is understanding how it goes back together. So this will help you to at least know the fasteners that you have in their original holders, and it should help you get it back together. Once again, you've got to be extremely careful you know, when you have an assembly like this. I've got the heatsink off of this. You can see I've wrapped a little bit of electrical tape around the sockets for the output transistors, just so hopefully I don't short something together. But you can see when you've got something like this, there's a lot of possible scenarios that can happen that won't turn out good for the unit. So you got to be extremely careful. With that being said, what I found, I'm going to try to, I don't know if I can show you this or not, but remember we had that 36 volts. There's that yellow wire. First of all, see that yellow wire coming up? What I did first, I did unsolder it, even though I was 99% sure it was coming. The 36 volts were coming from this board, the 36 volts DC. I unsoldered it just to make sure that speaker relay would engage, and it did. So I soldered that back on. But what I found is when I tap this board, the DC offset would go normal, would back to 36 volts, back to normal. So that told me I had something intermittent. Probably was not a component, probably. But we shall have to see. It's probably more like a solder joint, right? Because it's coming and going. And as I said, you got to be careful. What I'm doing here, you know, something bad can happen, you know, to the unit or even to yourself. So you got to be very careful. I've got it away from the chassis. There's nothing really for it to hit if I hit straight down. Just got to be careful of my bias resistor, but bias transistor under it, but that's not too bad. But it'll come and go if I hit up in this section here. Who knows where it is, you know, what you're really doing, sending a vibration down to here, who knows. But anyway, now I'm going to, seeing that I don't think I have a component issue, I mean, I still could have a cracked resistor, or who knows, cracked a leg on a transistor, I don't know. But probably this is something to do with a solder joint. So I'm going to take a look at the bottom now. I really didn't, you can see I've got the receiver in a different position now, so I can see the back of this assembly. I didn't really see anything, but I ended up just taking my iron, and over on that one side of the board where I was having issues, so about a third of the board, I just hit all the leads. I just flowed solder into those leads, and now I'm going to turn it back over and see if that helped us at all. You know, sometimes this is what needs to be done. these solder joints, just after years, especially on like this assembly that gets pretty warm, they just get to the point where they start to fail. You know, heating up, cooling down, heating up, cooling down. And again, we're talking, you know, 40 plus years. So this type of thing happens certainly fairly often. So I'm going to turn it back over now. Okay, I've got it back over now. You can see I took that electrical tape off the output sockets. I probably should have that on there right now. Once again, when you have these things loose, you got to be extremely careful. All it would take is for one of these leads to, you know, hit the chassis, hit something under the board, and that'll probably be the end of it. After flowing those solder points, the board looked nice and solid. The DC offset was just a few millivolts like it should be. I beat it around a little bit just to make sure it was good and solid, and it seemed to be solid. Up at the speaker relay, it looks, you know, we've got like 20, 25 millivolts, which is much more like it, and I'm sure I'll be able to adjust that right down to 0, and I was glad to see she was ready to go. I just have to say that this works. This happened to be a Marantz 2245, but this will work on any brand of vintage audio, amplifier or receiver. Pioneer, Sansui, other Marantzes, they all work in a similar manner. The key is to get the service manual for the unit. And if you have an issue like this, which is no audio, it seems like the unit powers up, you hit the power button, the face lights up, it looks like it's happy. The best way to really kind of tell if you got something working, go to FM, just see if that seems to be working. If it is and you have no audio out, first thing is to make sure you didn't hear that speaker relay go, and if it didn't, you can bet you've got some kind of issue either with the protection board itself in the unit or one of the two amplifier assemblies. You can eliminate the rest of the receiver for the most part. Very rarely you're going to have an issue outside of those three assemblies that would cause this problem. But this is a common problem that you'll see in vintage audio. I hope you liked the video. If you did, I'd appreciate a big thumbs up down below. And if you're not a subscriber, I certainly would appreciate if you became one, if you enjoyed this video and like to see more like it. And my present subscribers, I thank you for sticking with me. Y'all have a good day.